Thank you. Good evening. The Design Review Board public meeting of October 22nd is called to order. Due to the COVID-19 novel coronavirus and health recommendations from the LA County Health Department, the Design Review Board meeting is being conducted The Design Review Board meeting is being conducted virtually with no members of the public present. The public is encouraged to watch and participate from the safety of their homes to practice social distancing. The meeting can be viewed on local cable TV and is being streamlined online on the city's website at www.glendaleca.gov. For public comments and questions during the meeting, please call 818-937-8100. Again, that's 818-937-8100. City staff will be submitting the questions and comments in real time to the appropriate person. Current Design Review Board agendas are available by visiting our website at www.glendaleca.gov. Records of decisions for all projects will be posted online on the Planning Division's website. The chairperson may reorder agenda items at his or her discretion. Roll call for this evening. Board Member Minas. Board Member Minas, I believe you're muted.
Yes.
You're here. Yes, thank you. Board Member Smith.
Present.
Board Member Welch.
Present.
And Chair Simonian.
Present.
Report regarding posting of the agenda. The agenda for this meeting was posted on the bulletin board outside City Hall at or before 5 p.m. on October 19th. Approval of minutes. These would be the minutes for October the 8th. And all four board members were present. So if there are no comments, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I move to approve the minutes. Commissioner Smith?
I'll second that.
Thank you. So a motion by Board Member Smith and a second by Board Member Welch. In terms of a roll call, Board Member Minas?
Yes.
Board Member Smith?
Aye.
Board Member Welch?
Yes.
And Chair Simonian?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0. There are no items under old business. We do have one case under new business. However, there's a request to take items in a different order on the agenda if possible. We have a staff update regarding the design review amendments. that is scheduled, well, now on the agenda as 8A, and if possible, if the board so approves, we would like to move that up and take that now. All right. Thank you. This PowerPoint presentation is going to be a very good segue to our next item, so. You are. So this is just an introduction to the board of the upcoming design review amendments that are being proposed to City Council this coming Tuesday on October the 27th. This series of amendments relates to changes to the design review. Give us word. Okay, great, thank you. We're experiencing some technical difficulties on our end. But the upcoming amendments deal with a series of changes to the design review for projects in the Downtown Specific Plan, the design review authority for murals citywide, a proposed design review exemption for rebuilds following natural disaster, and associated related updates throughout the zoning code. The amendments proposed for the design review were actually addressed by City Council on July the 7th as part of the one-year update to the Downtown Specific Plan. And based on council's directions, we have amendments to eliminate all references to the Glendale Redevelopment Agency since its abolishment in 2008. There is no longer a redevelopment agency in the city, and though there are still remaining references in the zoning code, so we are proposing to eliminate all those references. Council also directed staff to, at this point, propose a two-step process. The Glendale Redevelopment Agency, which was then actually taken over by City Council for all projects in the DSP, had the option to review larger scale projects greater than 10,000 square feet in a two-step process, in a combined two-step process. This would be to combine it with stage one, which is preliminary design review, and a stage two, which is a final design review. These were actual references in the Glendale Redevelopment Agency guidelines, and so we are now codifying these references. And City Council also directed us at that time to move forward with a two-stage process, which would be having each project in the Downtown Specific Plan go through a two-step process as opposed to having the ability to combine those two processes. City Council also recommended that projects be brought before the design review board for your comments and recommendation prior to final review. So this is a change, and this essentially will have all projects in the Downtown Specific Plan area coming before the DRB, before you, for your comments and recommendation, which will then be presented to the City Council as part of the final design review. So that is one of the reasons why we wanted to make note of these amendments, because you will be seeing, unlike today, which you currently do not have any review authority or any review whatsoever of projects in the DSP, you will be seeing them in advisory capacity. And Chair Simonian, I believe you have a question?
I do. You can kind of tell I was about to ask a question. Thank you. In regards to an advisory agency, what other commissions are granted this opportunity as well? Does it go to Planning Commission as well? Or is it just DRB that gets to, look at these projects?
The direction was to present it to the design review Design Review Board, because you do have the authority and you have the area of expertise to comment on items such as site planning, mass and scale, and design and detailing. This is part of your purview for all of the projects citywide, and given your area of expertise, they felt it behooves them to actually have your comments and recommendations before they actually make a final decision.
So as of now, it's just the Design Review Board that looks over these kind of projects.
Yes, it would just be the Design Review Board as an advisory body. Currently, any type of discretionary entitlements, such as variances or parking reductions or whatnot, that are proposed as part of a proposed development in terms of a design review, are actually brought together is one package before the city council. The city council at this point in time has the authority to act on any type of discretionary entitlements such as variances and parking reduction permits. Now, the Planning Commission does review development agreements, so if a larger scale project in the downtown specific plan area proposes a development agreement such as to extend the length of their entitlements, or if they wanted to do so instead of having a covenant for their publicly accessible open space, they would then be going before the Planning Commission as a recommending body just for the development agreement alone.
Thank you.
But
Thank
all
you for that.
discretionary permits would be to City Council.
City Council.
This set of amendments includes changes to the design review authority for murals. This particular item was presented to the City Council on September 15th, 2020. Those amendments include transferring the design review authority from the Design Review Board to the Arts and Culture Commission. So if you remember just our last meeting, we had a mural that was proposed on Honolulu. That is because murals are under the authority of the Design Review Board for review. That review authority will then be transferred to the Arts and Culture Commission. So you will no longer be reviewing murals. As part of the mural amendments, there would also be a 5-year approval timeline. So after 5 years, the mural would have to be removed, or the applicants or property owners would be able to apply for a renewal of their mural approval. There was also a clarification that the city would be authorized to install public art on surfaces other than walls, such as the proposed skate park. And last but not least, there would be a comprehensive mural program, and any and all future amendments to the mural standards would be brought back to the City Council at a future date. There were some amendments also by the city attorney as part of the review authority for murals, that we would have to delete and modify certain mural standards. There are a number of standards. I believe there were actual 5 standards that have to be met by each and every mural, and the review authority would only be able to approve the mural if it meets those standards. Some of those standards have been found to be not in compliance or not content neutral with regards to the freedom of speech, the First Amendment. So those particular conditions have been either eliminated or modified, such as prohibiting murals from displaying letters, numbers, and symbols. That would be amended and struck out. We would also be deleting the architectural compatibility requirement for murals, and staff would then be drafting that content neutral with regards to time, place, and manner regulations for murals, and these would be brought back before City Council at a future date. Again, there were just a miscellaneous number of updates, the first being to allow for Design Review Board exemptions. Currently, projects, or I should say residential buildings, that are demolished due to natural disaster in the event of a fire or earthquake would have to go through the entire Design Review Board process in order to be rebuilt. Staff is recommending that this be modified to allow for design review exemption. So if the property owner wishes to rebuild the project, exactly the same footprint, the same square footage, they would not have to go back before the design review board. They would just be able to apply for a design review exemption. And again, these amendments, the minor references such as to the Glendale Redevelopment Agency, to the codification of a stage 1 and stage 2 review for design review board, these would all be amended throughout the design review chapter, and including application filing requirements and procedures for review. This set of amendments was presented before the Planning Commission on October 7th. It was recommended that council adopt these amendments, and as noted in the beginning, City Council will be considering these amendments this coming Tuesday at the special council meeting on October 27th at 2 p.m. So, just a few updates for you, and at this point, if the board does the board have any questions for staff?
Board members, are there any questions to staff at this point in time?
So just a quick clarification. So for the rebuild one, the code or the language will specify that it is for an exact rebuild to footprint and square footage and stuff like that?
Yes, Board Member Welch, it would be, essentially they would be able to rebuild what is currently existing, legally existing. So to the square footage, the floor area, and the building footprint.
Stylistically, though, they have the freedom to change style if they do?
They
Or
would,
if they're-
not at this point in time. If they wanted to change the actual style, that would go back to the design review board.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
Any other questions from the board members?
No, but I wanted to comment that that's a wonderful addition, I think, to our code, because in the case of a large disaster, there's going to be so much damage, such as an earthquake, let's say, there's going to be so much damage in the city that it would just overwhelm, I think, the design review board and really put an undue hardship on homeowners, because they would have to wait for so long in this way.
I have
able
a
to
point of
streamline it.
order. Sorry, I have a point of order. We can only hear you here and there, Chair.
Speak into the mic.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I thought it was,
kind of goes in and out.
is that
Sorry.
better?
Sure, try it.
Yeah, so I was just commenting how I think that's a wonderful, wonderful addition, because in the case of an emergency, we're just going to have so many projects that would come front of the city to be considered, and this is, I think, a step in the right direction.
Okay, well, thank you. So we will now segue to new business on the agenda, which is a new hotel in the downtown specific plan. As just mentioned, this is an advisory review, and the developers have elected to come before the design review board for your comments before going to stage 1. So this is a little bit unusual. The amendments have not been adopted at this point in time, so this is purely voluntary, but they are going before the board for your comments, which will then be presented to the your design review board comments, which will then be presented to the city council for their stage 1 preliminary review.
Wonderful, and before we have our case planner, Mr. Kiesel, start off, I wanted to maybe get some clarifications in regards to timing. So since this is somewhat of a new process in regards to this kind of analysis, and there's going to be, I'm seeing perhaps a developer and maybe an architect or an expert. We're not sure, but we'll find out. But is there going to be an opportunity for people to call in on this one item, or is this an internal discussion for us to provide feedback only and for the public to listen?
The public can call in if they would like.
Yes, and they would definitely be able, so if anyone.
And they were notified. Everything occurred for this project that occurs in a normal DRB project that comes before you.
Thank you for that clarification. And so with that, it probably would make sense for us to maintain the same timing as we would like any other case. And so let's start off with the applicant and development group, perhaps starting out with a 10-minute presentation. Go ahead.
And would you mind having staff be allowed to make the presentation first?
Oh, absolutely. I'm just wanted to clarify the timing so the applicant and their team would know how much time they have so they could allocate it properly and at the same time for the public to be able to call in. So after staff would make the presentation, the applicant would have, let's say, 10 minutes for a presentation, and then we would maybe have up to 3 minutes for public comments. And then, of course, there'll be a rebuttal at the end for the applicant and architect and its design team to address some comments from the surrounding neighborhood or staff or even the board members. And then we could then go from there.
I know the applicant team was a little concerned with the 5-minute limit, so I'm not sure that they may ask for even more than 10 minutes, so it's.
And
Up
I'll
to you,
just say up
obviously.
front that I'd be amenable to that because it is such a large and important project that we'd be willing to maybe go consider some additional minutes. So we'll just let them ask how much time they need and we'll consider it at that point in time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Our presentation may be a little bit disjointed today because we've had some computer issues, but Vili is going to assist me. Are you the one that will?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the Design Review Board Commission. The next item this evening is Design Review Case Number 1916682. Next slide, please. Thanks. This proposal consists of a new hotel containing 852 hotel rooms in two towers to be built on a surface parking lot on the north edge of a 5.2 acre site. The site is bounded by Brand Boulevard to the east, Sanchez Drive to the north, and Doran Street to the south. And then to the west, there is a relatively new mixed-use development. The existing on-site 14-story office building, the 1-story gym building, and then the 5-story parking lot, which are all located at the south part of the site, will be retained as part of the project. The hotel consists of a 4-story podium with 2 towers. The west tower will be 34 stories and the east tower will be 35 stories.
Roger?
Yeah. I can.
Are we on the right slide?
No. I can tell you when, unless it automatically.
I think they're trying to get you on the same slide so it makes sense with the public.
Okay. Go back to the site plan. It's probably right there. That's fine. Thank you. The lobby and retail areas are located at the street level along Sanchez Drive, and commercial areas are located along Brand Boulevard. The applicants are hoping to get a nice restaurant at the corner of Brand and Sanchez. Swimming pool and landscape amenities are located on the roof of the podium in the eastern corner of the site. You don't need to change the slide. And then a roof deck is located between the two towers. There are 1,949 parking spaces on the site, which includes parking for the required existing uses, the gym, the office tower, as well as for the proposed hotel. And the parking will be located in the existing 5-story garage as well as the new hotel building. Publicly accessible open space is concentrated in the eastern portion of the site and includes an existing plaza and walkways in the southeastern portion of the site, as well as the plaza in the northeast portion of the site. And unfortunately, the copy didn't turn out well. The publicly accessible open space is really in the far eastern portion of the site. And on the plans that were submitted to you electronically, you can probably see the yellow outline better than what you can see on the slide.
And what page would that be, Mr. Kiesel, on our project?
Let's see. That would be page 4, shows a good sort of description or the yellow shaded portions of the site are the publicly accessible open space. So page 4.
There's some page numbers on the bottom right of the packet. What numbers should we look at? 4?
P4, yeah.
Okay, wonderful. The yellow portion, I see.
Yeah. The subject site is zoned DSP Gateway District. The project is presented to you this evening as, Billy said, an advisory review to the City Council so that you can provide them with feedback that you may have. The feedback will then be provided to the council during their stage 1 review of the project. And then finally, staff analyzed the project site planning, the mass and scale, and the design and detailing against the standards contained in the downtown specific plan. So the DSP requires mixed-use commercial frontage streets to have an 18-foot setback from the curb. Within this area, the parkway needs to be 8 feet wide. The sidewalk needs to be 6 feet wide. And then the remainder is what we call a building adjacent zone. And this area includes such things as outdoor seating or landscaping. So along Sanchez Drive, the project includes an 8-foot sidewalk. That's the next slide. I thought I'd show you. You can change the slide now. Might be easier. Thanks. So this diagram now shows the width of the parkway and the setbacks. Along Sanchez Drive, the project includes an 8-foot parkway, a 6-foot sidewalk, and then a 4-foot building adjacent zone. Brand Boulevard is considered a primary frontage street in the DSP and is required to comply with the Brand Boulevard Streetscape Plan, which is implemented by the Public Works Department. The DSP requires commercial projects provide 10% of the site area as publicly accessible open space. The subject site has 227,000 square feet of area. It's a little over 5 acres. So would require 22,763 square feet of publicly accessible open space. The project provides just over that at 22,847. And again, on page 4 of your packets, that's clearly delineated.
Mr. Kiesel?
Yep.
On page 4, as it breaks down the 12,000 square feet of publicly accessed open space, we understand that the plaza the courtyards you've pointed out along Brand, and then there's the Paseo, which is, say, majority of that 22,000. And where exactly is that Paseo? Where's that hatched portion?
You've got the new part of the publicly accessible open space near the intersection of Brand and Sanchez. And then the developed portion of the site also includes some publicly accessible open space in the form of Paseo, which is between the 14-story office building and the 1-story gym.
Oh, I see. So they're using the existing circulation
Right.
as something towards that. I
Right.
see. Okay.
And that's located at the intersection of Brand and Doran. The publicly accessible open space needs to be open to the sky, oriented toward the street on at least one side, and be on the same level as as the sidewalk. The project complies with these requirements. In the DSP, no ground level parking shall be visible from any street frontage, and any ground level parking shall have active retail or other habitable uses facing the sidewalk, just to mask the parking. There are 3 new proposed driveways to access the new development. There's an entrance on Brand Boulevard, and then egress and ingress to and from the site. There are 2 of them proposed along Sanchez Drive. The project is designed such that the driveways are the only thing that are visible from the adjacent street right-of-ways. Parking is masked.
Mr. Kiesel, on the site plan, what page is the site plan? I'd written it down at some point, but the two. P4 again? The 2 driveways off of Sanchez, are they both ground level driveways?
Correct.
Or is one, and does one lead, do they both lead to the same podium level, or are they going to different podium levels, or do they have different intents?
They are, I think they just meet up, but I'll have to check.
Or is that something for the applicant too?
You can-
They both appear to lead to some surface grade level parking within the building, underneath the podium.
But one doesn't lead to one where the other leads to another.
Right, and then the westernmost of them leads, the driveway continues through the podium and then attaches to the existing 5-story parking structure.
That's on page,
I'm looking at P43 right now.
I see. So the western, I see, okay. All right.
And
Understood. It was somewhat difficult to sort this out on the screen, and the PDF file was so big. My computer was freezing up when I was
Right.
toggling back and forth because of the renderings.
Yeah,
So
the-
this hard copies is helping, and the presentation is as well. Thank you, Mr. Kiesel. Go ahead.
Okay. The existing driveways on Doran Street will not change as a result of the project. Landscaping areas are shown throughout the site. Specific plant palettes, hardscapes, planters, and seating designs will be provided to the council at the stage 2 review of the project. If you certainly have, or if you have suggestions or comments, you can certainly let us know, and we will provide that to council. As detailed in the staff report, staff believes that the site planning of the project is compliant with the downtown specific plan. The mixed-use commercial frontage street requirements along Sanchez as well as Brand are complied with. And the entire site includes the publicly accessible open space standards are met. And then finally, landscape plans, again, will be reviewed at the stage 2 design by council. The project site is located in the Gateway District of the DSP, which is characterized by high-rise development. The context of the surrounding built environment includes mixed and high-rise areas to the north, mid-rise mixed-use developments to the west, the high-rise Chase and U.S. Bank buildings, and low-rise multifamily buildings to the east, and then more high-rise buildings to the south. High-rise facades above 60 feet need to be stepped back a minimum of 20 feet. Buildings above 85 feet in height need to be tall and slender, and then floor plates above 200 feet in height need to be reduced at least 15%. That is also shown on the slide that is before you, that's shown on the camera. So you can see the 20-foot setback, and then the 20-foot setback, and then the 15% reduction, sort of as a section view. Modulation or changes of material are required for every 150 feet of horizontal length. The proposed project complies with these standards. The podium level is 60 feet high, after which the towers step back 20 feet.
Should we be advancing any slides?
Nope, we're fine. Yeah, that's okay. After the 17th floor, the floor plan is clipped at the corners, and you'll see that later, reducing the size of the floor plate. The high-rise towers are 148 feet in wide, below the width which a change in material is required. The DSP identifies the Brand Boulevard and Sanchez intersection as an entry landmark or an entry location, which they suggest for a landmark architectural feature. The next slide, when you get a chance.
I think they're trying to figure out what slide you may be on.
It's the next one. So this would be if you're looking at the corner of, at the intersection of Sanchez and Brand, and this is the corner feature that they are designing into their project. The project proposes a tower-like element, which is what you can see at the podium level. And this is right adjacent to the pool and the recreation area. Hotels are one of the priority uses in the DSP and are eligible for height and FAR incentives. The proposed project is 380 feet in height with an FAR of 7.5 and complies with the maximum height and FAR under the incentive program.
I have a question, Mr. Keys,
Yep.
on this topic as well, and I'm kind of asking questions as you're going along because I think I'll help with the narrative. When the downtown specific plan was created, say 10 years ago or whatever it was a while ago, at that point in time, there was absolutely a shortage of hotels in Glendale. We just didn't have enough. And in the last 10 years, and more specifically in the last 2 or 3 years, fortunately, we've had good hotel projects that came to fruition. And so has a study been done, or how much of our hotel sort of need has been satisfied as a city?
Chair Simonian, that matter is actually being addressed in the next go-around of amendments for the downtown specific plan. That question was asked by City Council, and we will be reevaluating the saturation of hotels in the downtown and whether that point has been met. So this will be coming back to the City Council.
I think so, because, when we're talking about, 852 rooms, I forget what was the overall need for our city, how many hotel rooms have been brought on board, and what is that current unmet need. Thank you for clarifying that. That's going to be looked into.
Staff believes that the mass and scale of the project is appropriate, given the mass of the project is consistent with the surrounding development, meaning there are lots of high rises around. It effectively utilizes the step backs and facade modulations and floor plate reductions. And I hadn't mentioned this before, but the DSP requires a strong base, middle, and top of high-rise buildings, and staff believes that in this case, the design does that with the podium level, the 2 towers, and then the equipment shelter becomes the top of the building. So with regard to design and detailing, stage one review really from the council concentrates on mass and scale and site planning. Design and detailing is really a stage two matter that council looks at. That being said, the DSP does have some standards and that council will eventually weigh in on, but we did want to provide some analysis of it, even though that's not the big issue at stage one. So the DSP requires buildings to be constructed in a manner that appears substantial. The project complies with this by providing a significant amount of fenestration at the pedestrian level, and where glazing is not proposed, the facade is faced with stone tile or metal cladding or architecturally finished concrete. The DSP requires lobbies to provide weather protection and have some visual prominence. Additionally, the lobbies need to be recessed or projected from the main part of the facade. And as well, the paving in front of the lobbies on the exterior needs to differentiate from the paving around. In this case, and I'll show you in the elevations as well as the floor plans that are coming up, the lobby entrance to the project is recessed and includes a canopy. Paving will be, again, deferred to the stage two review, but if you have preferences, we can certainly note them. The DSP requires 75% of the project to be or the storefront to be transparent. The project provides about 82%. Additionally, the DSP requires building facades to use architectural solutions to avoid creation of impenetrable, unarticulated building facades. So this has a nice, again, it uses a lot of windows, and when the fenestration isn't on the facade, there is stone cladding, there's metal cladding, and there are structurally finished concrete panels. So before I conclude, I wanted to go over just the elevations and then the floor plans real quick. And these are all in your packet, and they probably translate better in your packet as well.
If
So-
you would, Mr. Kiesel, just let us know which page you're on the packet, and we'll follow along.
Sure. So next slide. The first slide that, once it comes up, will be page 52.
Thank you.
And this is the elevation from Doran.
I'm sorry,
That's
Roger, is this the correct?
Yep, thanks.
Okay.
So this is the Doran facade. You can see the parking garage in the foreground, the office building, and then the two towers. There's also some of the materials that they're proposing to use. Next slide. This is the elevation from the freeway from Sanchez, and that's on page 50, I believe. Yeah. So this would be the front of the development. The lobby is in between the two towers on the ground floor. And then to the far left is, you can see the outline of the tower at the intersection, and the pool areas between the east tower and the intersection tower. Next slide. The east elevation is page 51, and that's looking, if you were standing on Brand Boulevard. And then the west tower is page 53. And that is the elevation adjacent to the relatively newly built Modern Villa? Is that the name of the building?
Modera.
Madera.
Okay. Next slide. This just shows more of a section. At the bottom of the page, I'm sorry, that's page 54. It shows the parking below grade, the parking above grade, and the two towers. Next slide. We'll go to the floor plans now. This is on page page 41. And these are the below grade parking levels. Next slide is
And
also-
Mr. Kiesel, there's 3 levels of subterranean parking, is that right?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
So level, next slide, please. Parking level 1 is on your packet, page 42. The ground level, next slide, please, is on page 43. And this shows a partial site plan. The lobby area you can see is recessed into the facade. It shows the new publicly accessible open space along Brand mostly, but also along Sanchez. Again, this is the ground level. Next slide. The mezzanine level is mostly a parking level. It does have, it's, sort of behind the commercial areas at the ground level. That is on page 44. The next slide, please. Levels 2 through 4 are between the ground level and the podium level. This does include some hotel rooms as well as parking. Again, that's on page 45. The podium level is page 46. And this is the level that includes the pool and the tower at the intersection of Brand and Sanchez, along with an open space area between the two towers.
Mr. Kiesel?
Yeah,
So if we're looking at this section,
that's
This-
the podium.
okay, so
Where your
page
finger is
46, L5 is this podium level.
Correct, yeah. The next slide, please. Next slide, sorry. Levels 6 through 17 are the next slide, and that's page 47. Page 48 is levels 18 through 33. And this is where, in the presentation, where buildings need to be reduced in floor plate area by 15% above 200 feet. This is where this occurs on the 18th level. And so that's why you see the corners of the building flipped.
Mr. Kiesel?
Yes.
Stepping back a moment, I actually had a question in regards to the use. Let's say in this section on page 21, we're looking at the overall, building section.
Yeah.
Where it says executive suites. Is that referring to like a WeWork kind of a co-office, or are we talking about executive suites like hotel executive?
Hotels.
I see. Okay, thank you for the
You can
clarification.
see the hotel rooms, the basic size ranges are differentiated by different names. So for example, most of the executive suites are just under about 950 to 1,000 square feet.
And that was one of my questions that we'd probably ask the applicant, is the unit mix and sizes and
Yeah, definitely
process.
something to think about.
And then the final slide is the penthouse level. Thank you, Vilya. And that is on page 49.
So there is no roof deck that's proposed. We have a penthouse at the top.
Well,
Is there an open to the sky roof deck component on at the top?
no, not for the hotel guests. No, just the penthouse suites have, it looks like, some access to,
Private balconies,
yeah, the outside.
okay?
The roof of each tower is mechanical.
Right, right.
Are there requirements in the DSP about, well, are there restrictions or requirements about rooftop decks in the DSP?
No.
Thank you.
So that concludes my presentation. I know the applicant and the developer's representative are online. They also have a presentation. So I can answer questions, or we can proceed to them.
I know I have some questions for staff, but board members, do we have questions for staff? Board Member Smith?
You're muted.
You're still muted.
I can't fix it. Okay,
There you are.
there. Sorry,
Okay.
my computer was not cooperating. I think it had to do with how big that file is. I have a question that I don't know if anybody can answer about fire life safety in Glendale. Does our fire department have the capacity to provide protection to a property of this height? I didn't think of it till today, sorry.
Yeah, that's not, I mean, I don't have the expertise to say that or to know that. They will be routed, these plans, and I'm sure that they will have comments as a result.
Right,
them
because we
seeing
don't have
this?
anything, sorry, we don't have anything this tall in Glendale, and I'm concerned about that.
Yeah, they'll be routed the plans and have sufficient time to comment on that.
Okay, thanks very much, Roger.
Sure.
That actually brought up a question that I didn't have written down, but I think it's a good time to ask it. Typically, when cases come in front of the design review board, it's been circulated front of or to most departments within our city. What departments have assessed this package or this design at this point in time?
It's all been pretty preliminary, because the city council hasn't even seen the stage 1 review of it. So it wouldn't surprise me that the fire department had seen this before, but at this point, they don't have, no department has,
And
been
And
asked for
typically,
comments.
in a typical scenario, I would imagine for a project of this size, even to go to city council on a stage one, different departments would have looked at it. Is that right or no?
They will.
They will,
Yes.
yes, at that point. Okay, so at this point, we're keeping things general. We're gonna talk about site planning, mass, scale, orientation, connectivity, et cetera.
Right.
And won't get into the technicalities of some of the obvious building and safety features such as life and safety. et cetera.
But any issues that the board does raise will go into our report to council.
Okay.
So
And there
even
would-
if we don't have answers for you, we're going to relay your concern or your questions if they're concerns.
Okay,
Right, I've written down life safety.
of course. It's
As a note.
Right.
As well, stage one does not concentrate, as I've said, on design and detailing. However, if you all have concerns, questions, or things that you like regarding design and detailing, certainly bring that up, and we'll forward that along.
Yeah, and just for tonight is unusual. In the future, you'll be doing advisory review between stage one and stage two. And city council very specifically wants to hear your design questions and your design input. So either for this project tonight and then in the future when you're doing advisory review, that's critical. So.
Wonderful. Board members, do we have other questions? Yes, Board Member Walsh.
Yes, thank you, Mr. I wanted to get some clarification. So the project site you listed as 227,000 square feet, correct?
Correct.
Is that just the building area, the one that stretches along Sanchez, or does that include the existing building and the gym and the parking lots?
It includes more than just the proposed building. It includes the office tower, it includes the gym, it includes the parking garage.
So it includes all of that. So that's
Correct.
all part of the FAR calculation that goes into this?
Yes.
Okay, so is it fair to say, for all intents and purposes, that they're basically taking some of the air rights from the other parts of the structure in order to build higher on this front portion on Sanchez?
They're allowed to go that height in FAR.
No, I understand, but the FAR is being calculated on the entire site, including existing buildings, including a one-story building, including a parking garage.
Oh, yeah, yes.
Right, because that's what I mean by using the air rights. They're using basically the entire site
Okay.
in order to maximize. So when the calculations are done, you're also counting in the existing buildings, the existing one-story and the existing 14-story building, and the calculating of the allowable floor plans and footprints that they're allowed to build?
Correct.
Okay. And because they're using this entire project site, I note that the existing parking structure that exists on Duran, I don't think would that qualify as meeting the current standards for DSP. But because they're using that as part of this project, does that have any impact on how they should be doing that parking structure?
Since they're not touching the parking structure, you're correct. We're not looking at it at that particular area of the site as complying or not complying with the DSP. I think obviously if that parking garage were proposed today, it wouldn't comply with the DSP, and we would require commercial, residential that masks that area. But since they're not touching it, no, we haven't looked at it from that extent.
Okay, I mean, a point could be made, though, that they are using it as part of the project site, so the entire project could be conceived as, needing to be applicable to the guidelines.
Sure.
So, okay, one other question. The well, two other questions actually. The driveway that they have on Duran there, that's still going to stay there with some cars going through, feeding into the ATMs or whatever they do right now?
Correct.
Okay. And then, do you know why they're proposing so much extra parking than is actually required? Or is that a question I should just defer to the applicant?
I would defer that to the applicant.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And I have some questions as well. Has a traffic study been conducted, Mr. Kizo?
I don't believe so. I'd have to look at that.
So we have no idea about what the net AM and PM traffic increases are with this project and how that would affect the level of service associated with the level of service that we currently have as far as, I don't know, it might be a D or whatever it is at Brand and the on-ramp to the freeway and how congested that is. We don't know how this is going to affect the existing on-ramp.
We don't at this point. An environmental review will take place between stage 1 and stage 2, and that's where we'll get that information.
But typically, even on smaller projects, we do traffic studies to really figure out ideal locations of, driveways, orientation of driveways, the amount of traffic that will be added, and if streets need to be widened, turn lanes need to be installed, traffic signals need to be, modified, installed, etc. Right? So that hasn't been done. That's what I'm hearing. Okay. And in regard.
Mr. Kiesel has described that will be one of the required studies to be submitted by the applicant shortly.
Okay, well, it's good that they'll do it, but, whatever we're calling it, there's going to be a whole bunch of new cars coming in and a whole bunch of new cars leaving this site on a given day. And whatever we call it, it's new traffic. And so that's going to have an impact on the adjacent traffic patterns, et cetera. So I had a question on that. The other question I have is, in regards to the site plan, is Sanchez proposed to be widened at this point in time with turn lanes and acceleration and deceleration?
I think it is, yes.
Can you point us out to where we should look on that on the package to get a better understanding of that?
Let's see. It's not that clear, but it's on page 40 where it says new curb line. Let's see if there's another. That's probably the clearest that I can see real quickly. The applicant may know how much.
And I know the applicant's listening, and while we're going through these questions, if maybe you could, if you have a diagram handy, it would be a good one to kind of bring up, because that's probably a question that will come up. Okay. The other question that I had, does staff know where the developer on page 33 of the package has done a nice job in kind of identifying and breaking down the vertical use of the building. And the hotel component says hotel rooms and suites and then hotel residential suites.
Residential suites.
Presidential suites. Oh, I see. Okay. Well, that explains that question, because I didn't know what that concept was, so. That was okay. As far as the unit mix is concerned and the average unit size, I think I asked that question. We don't know what that is, and the applicant's going to provide that, maybe at some point.
Yeah, we did a rough breakdown in the staff report, just to give you
I
a
saw
sense.
that, yeah.
But yeah, the applicant would best be able to help you understand those sizes.
And from what I understood from staff's report, the DSP allows for an FAR and height increase for hotel use, and the applicant is utilizing that component of the DSP to propose the project as depicted in front of us. And I think what you had mentioned in there is in that it's from like 7.25 FAR to 7.5. It was an increase for the FAR if it's a purely hotel use or something like that. Is that correct?
Well, the increase in height in FAR is not just allowed for hotels. There are other uses, there are other things that you can do to increase the height of the building or increase the FAR.
Understood. And so if we took the hotel use out of this building, would it qualify for the FAR increase based on some of those other attributes that a building or a project could have in order to obtain the FAR increase?
It may. I can look at that and get back to you.
Okay. Because I think that's an important question to ask in relation to the need for hotel in our city, which there is, but how much of that demand has been met, and how much is this project providing, and also what this project would look like if a portion of, let's say, the hotel becomes economically infeasible at a future point in time, and it's converted to something else. So those were, I think, some questions I had in regards to some of that thought process.
Chair Simonian, and I believe Board Member Smith is patiently waiting to ask her questions as well, but just to speak to you in regards to the question of conversion, if at any point in the future this project was converted from a hotel use to some other use, there would be issues. We would be looking at the overall Downtown Specific Plan standards. So if, for instance, this project was converted to residential, we would be looking at the residential standards for a community benefit, because again, they would need to meet the community benefit section of the code, which would require additional publicly accessible open space, which this particular project would fall short. They would need to also ensure that the configuration, the unit mix, meets the community benefit chapter as well, which I believe there is minimum 40% have to be 2 bedrooms or more, and so forth and so on.
Correct.
There's also a menu of options in terms of additional community benefit standards such as mobility improvements or public art on site and things like that. So we would look at the community benefits chapter in the DSP and see if it qualifies for any of the other so-called preferred uses. The one being the additional residential, multifamily residential development, and those additional standards, which at this point in time, we would also be looking at parking, because there's a different parking requirement from a hotel versus residential, which would be the most,
Substantial deviation.
it would be a substantial deviation, correct?
There are also development fees for residential projects that would have to be paid as part of the development of the project that don't apply to hotels.
That's right. That's right. And so, and a lot of those questions, of course, will be discussed, I'm sure, by City Council coming up. And it just, whether it's a 5-story building or a 35-story building, once it's built and it's there and it's sitting vacant, then all of a sudden, you end up really accommodating, let's say, the situation to try to get it to work and to try to get it filled up and to try to get it as a meaningful part of a community. And so sometimes those ideals are looked past, right? If you're trying to convert something later. And so those were some of the questions I had. In regards to the public open space that's accessible to the public, you had mentioned it's 22,000 square feet is required, and that's based on the overall 5-acre site. That calculation is based on the overall 5-acre
Correct.
site.
Mr. Simone?
Yes?
Please continue on.
And of that 22,000 square feet, more or less, 12,000 of it is as proposed in and around the existing gym and the existing office
Correct.
area. Are improvements being proposed on that 12,000 square feet? Because I know that intersection well, that between the gym and the office is a small paseo that is accessed by individuals that work in the office building. And the circulation around the gym is really used by the gym because lots of people go in and out. So are improvements being proposed in that area?
They are being proposed. Again, a lot of that is stage 2. That may be something you ask, further information from the applicant, but I know
think
that
that
they're.
would make sense to add that while we're here. Okay. Board Member Smith, I'm sure you have some questions as well.
Thanks so much, Chair. Actually, I had looked up the South Glendale Community Plan, EIR, and found the level of service for the streets nearby, and I am as well concerned about traffic. The major arterials there, it was a little unclear which direction or this or that, but Central and Sanchez in the AM already has a D. Brand and Good has a D in the morning and in the evening. And 134 east of Central is a C to E level of service. So it will be interesting to see how that affects what ends up being developed here. I was making that point to your point.
Thank you for looking that up so quickly. And the packet itemizes the total parking provided by the development, including the existing. What is the
Correct.
net number of parking that's being added onto the site?
The new amount?
Yes.
Let me look.
So tiny.
It may take us a few minutes, so
Okay,
if you want to
so
proceed.
then I'm going to proceed. I'm glad the package identifies a strong connection at the corner of Brand and Sanchez. And I was really delighted to kind of see the commercial space that's being proposed there as a form of connectivity. And what the outdoor space and eating that may be associated with a restaurant in that area was something I wanted the applicant to address at some point. And more specifically on page 21, which is our section, as Mr. Kiesel indicated, the last 4 feet is for, seating and open space and also, for dining areas. And in today's era of COVID, it's amazing how Brand Boulevard has kind of changed, right? We have all this outdoor area and it's very lively. And frankly, if it wasn't there, all those businesses would not have survived. So that'd be interesting to see how the applicant thinks in today's day and age that open space in and around that corner can be utilized. While staff is looking for the new parking count, maybe we could, if there's no more questions, start off. And I'm sure the applicant's gonna have that new parking count very handy. So do we have any other questions for staff at this point in time? No? Okay. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to the applicant. I know there are two different groups that we could see on our video teleconference. Please introduce yourselves and then let us know who wants to start off. And thank you again for taking the time to come and share your wonderful project with us.
Sure. Good evening. My name is Mark Spector. I'm the Vice President of Development for Alani Group. With me tonight is Salim from IBI Architects, and he's got a very thorough and lengthy design presentation. So I will let him walk through the presentation. Before we start, I would just say, I believe the structure that's there now is about 800 stalls, and we're providing 1,900 stalls. The excess code, or the difference from required provided parking is from all the feedback that we've gotten from the broker community. We own 3 office buildings in Glendale. All of the office leasing brokers have all told us that if we had more parking, they'd be more successful at leasing office space. So that is the extra increase in parking, taking our office from 2 per 1,000 to 3 per 1,000. So that's the difference that you see in the numbers required to provided. So with that, I'll turn it over to Salim, and he can go through the video that he's prepared and quickly walk through the design presentation. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. Good evening, respected chair and board members. My name is
Excuse me, 1 second. If I may just ask Mr. Spector one question. You mentioned 1,900 new parking spots will be created, but on page 1 of the staff report, it mentions that 1,949 parking spaces existing and proposed. And so could you clarify if the 600 existing stalls, in addition to the 1,900 proposed ones, so there's going to be 2,500 parking spots on this?
This is more of like what's going to be provided.
No, so I have in my notes here that at the end of the development, the full build out would have 1,949 stalls.
That's what I thought. So then if 600 are existing, then 1,349 new stalls are being added?
I believe the structure has 800 stalls existing, but I'd have to check check the number and confirm.
Okay, if you would please let us know some point during this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Good evening, respected chair and board members. My name is Salim Narayanan, and I'm with my colleague, Manuel Samuel, and Yancy Clayton is on the line. And first of all, I want to thank you, the board and the planning department, for giving us this opportunity to present our case. I'd like to share a video presentation followed by a slideshow. As you are aware, the project site is located in the Gateway District in North London, facing the Sanders Drive and the Pinjura Highway to the north and the North Brand to the east. The project was completed is around 560 feet long street front, which will overlap Sanders Drive and the future park, linear park connecting between the North Brand and the North Central. Our objective of this project is primarily based on 3 major focus. 1, respect and conform to the design principles and guidelines of the DSP. Number 2, respond and complement to the natural and built environment of North Glendale and also the site context. And number 3, enhance the pedestrian public dream experience through design principles and careful planning between the indoor and outdoor spaces. With that, I would like to show a video showing the overall scheme. Next one, please. So, as I mentioned, you can see here the site, which is approximately 670 feet, and at the top right-hand corner is an image collected from the DSP.
Mr. Emmanuel, I think there's a problem with your screen sharing because at the moment, it's just a blank gray screen on our end.
Sir, you're going to need to stop. Oh, there you go.
Are you able to see the screen now?
Yes, we see your screen now, so proceed, thank you.
Also, if you could go to full screen, it would help us, the public, see it a little better.
Yeah, if you would maximize your screen.
Is it more clear now?
It's about the same size, but this may be the best we could have at the moment, so proceed if you would.
That's the best we can show. It's the full screen mode now. In this page, if you notice the top right-hand corner, that's an extract from the DSP guideline showing the linear path connecting between the North Brand and the North Central. And we think that this project, once complete, will complement to the emerging neighborhood, which has a variety of mixed use from hotels, offices, residential uses, and other uses. This is an overall site plan. Project had shown this earlier. As you can see, there are 3 vehicle entrances, one from the north, east to west side from the center side, another one almost midway from the center side, and a third one is from the North Brand. The entrance from the North Brand and the one from the midway from the center side are existing ones, and we think proposing that this way, the parking will be dispersed in different locations, and we will obviously will have a traffic engineering board for reviewing and analyzing the traffic demand for the area. This diagram shows much of a landscape treatment of the public space and private areas. As you can see, along the street frontage, there is an extensive landscaped area, and at the northeast corner, we have a plaza which will be an engaging open space with the proposed restaurant or retail space in that location. At the top of the podium, there will be an amenity component with swimming pool and other amenities. And above that, there will be two towers. In total height, the east tower will be 35 stories and the west tower will be 34 stories. As you may have seen in the rendering, the east tower will be an iconic feature of overlooking to the Sanchez and North Brand Junction. This diagram illustrates how, from a simple massing with a base and a tower form, how we have composition into smaller and fine-grained details. So the second diagram shows how the 670 feet of the linear length is broken down into smaller modules along the public ring. And there is a requirement that linear length above 150 feet need to be divided and broken down into smaller 40 feet separation. So we have achieved that, and that 40 feet separation in the middle will be a focal point acting as the main entrance to the hotels. And there is also a requirement that above 60 feet podium, the tower form need to be set back 20 feet. So you can see that in this diagram that the tower forms are set back 20 feet from the base podium. And about 200 feet high, there is another requirement that the floor plates need to be reduced by 15%. We think that by taking away some portions of the corners, it will give a much more interesting articulation for the tower form, and also it meets the objective. And on the diagram 3, bottom left-hand corner, you could see at the Sanchez and North Brand corner, we also have an interesting architectural feature, which is also complementing to the overall scheme of the project. The fourth one is more or less the final image, what you have seen in the video. The main objective of the project here is to have a cohesive composition of different elements. The tower tops have some angular forms, which are inspired from the North Glendale hillscape. Same is the balconies, which are growing from bottom to the top in geometric pattern, which is inspired from the it's an animated expression of the character of the North Glendale hilltop. As you can see, this geometric pattern of the balcony it's like a wave kind of a pattern, as if you see the North Glendale mountains on a sunny day with the shades and we have a rendering showing that. This is a picture showing that the angular patterns with the geometric movement. So that's one of the main features we have, was the inspiration for creating an interesting pattern to this landmark Easter Tower. And similarly, the top of the towers are capped with an angular form inspired from the mountain caps. And a similar kind of a character is adopted for the southwest, the northeast corner, signifying a landmark feature for the Sanchez and North Brand corner. Next one, please. This diagram shows how we are responding to some of the neighborhood buildings. We have adopted some angular forms which are inspired from the angular orientation of the buildings, and also this, and similarly the stepping forms of some of the neighborhood buildings are adopted in the massing composition of the structure. And you may see that both of these towers will have some symmetrical plans. They have been treated differently with the articulation of the balconies. The main approach here is to have a single podium base, which is more or less has square and rectilinear gates, which are complementing, like this slide, which are complementing to the rectangular grids of the office blocks in this area. And at the same time, the tower forms us more of horizontal expression, which will have a distinct character, but it ties with the base in a different form. The building entrance has, as I mentioned before, there is a 40-feet separation between the tower form and there is a 20-feet recess, which also has a stepping form, which is in line with the DSP guidelines for building separations. And you can see in this elevation, the central focus area where we have a large canopy, entrance canopy is there. It is treated slightly different from the remaining to have a distinct character. So in this elevation, you can see the base has more of linear expressions, vertical and rectilinear expressions, whereas the tower forms has more of horizontal expressions. And that is also one of the requirements from the DSP guideline to have a variety of form and character for the massing and fenestration applications. This shows a much more detailed scale of different styles and different details for the fenestrations. The towers has more closer models, whereas the base has a much more linear, larger models, which are in line with the requirement, in line with its storefront character. This diagram shows a public room experience with stone cladding and metal cladding treatments, which will give more of a texture and color to the elevation expressions. And at the same time, the upper levels have much more a simple grid pattern approach. That's what it is. This is the corner of Sandys and North Drive, where we have a landmark architectural character, which will be highlighted with some vertical linear lighting, which will be a soft lighting. Of course, we have to study that in more detail. We think the Connaught Plaza at this location will be an animated expression, very lively in the evenings, and also it will complement to the neighborhood. And going back to the previous rendering, so you can see the overall view of the project as we look from the north.
Mr. Emanuel, your 10 minutes has expired. I'd like to know how much more time do you need to finish your presentation, and if Mr. Spector needs additional time as well.
Thank you, Chair. We are here to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. All right. But board members, do we have, I'm sure we do, but who wants to go first with their questions for the applicant? Well, since I'll go first with some questions to start it off, and some of which I've already asked staff earlier. Have you done a traffic analysis internally, by the way, to have an idea of the impact with the new traffic?
We haven't done a traffic analysis yet. We definitely will do that. Going back to the parking questionnaire before, as based on the requirement for parking, this hotel requires around 600 672 parking that is shown on page 3 of the presentation package. And that is the requirement based on the current computation, whereas the actual parking provided at site is 1,210, including the office parking.
Mr. Emanuel, and we're having a little bit of a hard time hearing you, but the actual number of parking provided, net parking is what?
If you may please see page 3, there is at the top of the parking computation, there is a parking requirement based on the required bylaw requirement. So the hotel required is 672. We are proposing is 700. So that is 28 parking more than required for the hotel. The remaining parking is to meet the requirements of the surface parking that will be offset into the new parking structure.
Okay.
So the top,
Just a couple of questions, just for clarification purposes, and thank you for pointing out where in the package we could see that, but it's at least difficult for me, just because I have an 11 by 17 package in front of me, and I would need a pretty big magnifying glass to see that. But from what I understood, you're saying that the commercial and hotel, as proposed, would require 672 new parking spaces per the DSB, and you have provided 700 new net parking spots. Is that correct?
that is correct for the hotels, yes.
Okay.
And also the existing office parking, the requirement is 815, but there is already existing 1,210 parking, including the surface parking.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. In regards to Sanchez Drive and the access into the project, are you proposing an additional traffic lane, or how are you dealing with the ingress and egress in and out of the site off of Sanchez and perhaps even Brand?
If you may look at the page 43, to bring it up on the screen, you can see that there is a driveway from the Sanchez. There are two driveways from the Sanchez. One is somewhere in Midway, and there is also one at the northwest corner. And there is an additional drive-in, drive-out from the north Brand. So is that answers your question?
Not really. I understand that there's two ingress and egress off of Sanchez, and there's one driveway off of Brand, so I understand that. My question is in regards to a street widening or proposed street widening on Sanchez Drive and Brand. Are you proposing to move the actual right-of-way and make it wider in order to accommodate the flow of traffic? And the reason why I ask that is it's already a very impacted intersection, and so I'm wondering if that's been taken into account and if you already have a dedication based on your site plan on page 43.
Yes, along Sanchez, there is a requirement from the engineering to have 10 feet dedication. So the current curb line will be moved 10 feet south. And the required 18 feet started setback is provided from the new curb line. So there is, so then you go back to that section of the other one. And of course, we haven't done a traffic analysis study yet, and there may be other traffic measures need to be required, like traffic lights.
Sure. So the 10-foot dedication that's occurring, is it resulting in a new lane, or is it just resulting in a wider and deeper right-of-way, parkway, sidewalk, etc.?
We haven't gotten any feedback from engineering yet, so we'll comply with whatever the city requirements are, and then we'll use those requirements for our traffic study. So right now, it's just very prelim. We've gotten some basic information on dedications, those types of things. And we volunteered to do the early design review with your committee.
Understood. And thank you for that clarification. And since we're going to have a lot of questions back and forth, I think, the reason why I was mentioning that is, of course, site planning and the way the project should be oriented. I think one would imagine that after you do a traffic analysis, when you're adding this many hotel rooms, there's going to be an impact to the already congested intersection. And so that would be something to take into consideration now as your site planning, especially at a level 1, because building location, storefronts, et cetera, all that is going to be impacted at some point based on that study. The other question I had was in regards to the unit mix and the average unit size. Do you happen to have an average unit size for the project?
Salim, do you have a blended average unit size?
We do have a computation, but we haven't looked into the average. It's a mix of different uses.
So, I can give you the percentages per unit.
Unit sizes.
Sorry, I'm not sure if you heard me. I can give you the percentages of different unit types to start, if that helps, and their square footages.
I think we have that in the staff report. For example, there's 8 2,059 square feet units. There's 16 that range from 1,334 to 1,380. There's 248 units that range from 1,000 to 1,077. And then the balance of it range from 500 to 800. And so I'm just wondering what the average unit size is, which would be your net residential divided by number of units. It would be one easy way for you to give me a number at the moment, because I don't know what your net residential square footage is. Do you happen to have that?
I believe the net hotel size, is 775.
Okay.
But that's from my notes. That's not from the architect's drawings. I don't know if they have that, an updated calculation tabulated for that.
We do have a percentage of the different types of rooms on page 3. And we have 14% studios, 38% one bedroom, 19% 1 plus den, 27% 2 bedroom, and 3% 3 bedroom. So in total, around 30% is 2 bedroom and more. And with 1 bedroom, then it's close to 50% more than 1 bedroom units.
Executive suite.
And I was quickly trying to write that down, but if you would repeat that, studios are what percentage?
14%.
And the 1 bedrooms again?
14% are studios, 38% 1 bedroom, 19% 1 plus den, 27% 2 bed, and 3% 3 bed.
Okay. Thank you. So in regards to the average unit size, and let's say that is 775 square feet, I quickly looked up just some average U.S. hotel sizes, which are about 350 square feet on average in the U.S. And of course, that trend is moving smaller. But why are you proposing, almost double, if not more than double, the average, U.S. hotel size? Why are you going with such large hotel square footages, and what's the mentality behind it?
Ani is a privately held real estate development company. We have a number of different asset classes that we're invested in, from hotel to office to apartment. And so for the Glendale Hotel, the business plan that we're looking into is the business traveler, and just staying in touch with the trend for a lot of the business traveler. So I'm getting a lot of feedback, but a lot of the similar types of hotels that are getting larger and larger. Now, obviously, we're still refining the business plan for this development site. We've allowed for it to be phased. So we'll build one tower and then build a second tower. Like I've said to people before, we have been in business 50 years, and we've been in business that long, not because we've lost money and had unsuccessful projects. So I have no doubt that this project will be a success, but it is an evolving business plan.
And Mr. Spector, I assume this package was submitted or the concept was thought out kind of pre-COVID. How does the current COVID scenario, you think, affect that business plan and the viability of this number of, hotel rooms at that average unit size? How do you think that business plan will kind of weather in the future?
I think obviously it's hard to say. I don't think anyone fully knows the extent or length of the pandemic. But we've taken different measures, like I mentioned, the largest one being we've allowed for the project to be phased. So roughly we can build, 400 hotel rooms, and then, down the road later, build another 400. And so I think, by the time that we have approvals and are moving forward, hopefully we're well past COVID and it's behind us.
And this might be more for the design team as well, or even yourself. In regards to the outdoor kind of open space and connectivity with the overall community, more specifically the restaurant that's proposed at the corner and outdoor seating, how do you really see that plaza at the corner being utilized, and how would you propose to improve the additional 12,000 square feet of existing common open space that you're integrating into the project as to satisfy your open space requirements? What's kind of the vision there?
Well, the corner of Sanchez and Brand and the restaurant and outdoor plaza area, that's the main real feature of the project. What we were trying to do is link, the southern part of Brand to the northern part of Brand, and get people that, potentially work on the other side of the freeway to walk across, maybe with the capped park someday, and want to come to the restaurant to activate the street more than it currently is. And then for the remainder of the open space, I believe we do have a drawing showing some improvements in that area. Is that correct, Salim?
Yes, that is correct.
Is that depicted on page 43?
Sorry, I didn't follow your question.
Page 43, the site plan depicts the corner plaza. Is that what I should be looking at to get a better idea of your proposed use of that area?
That shows the corner plaza. Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Simone,
Yeah,
you were also
please,
asking about
please.
improvements to the existing public space, right?
Yes. So in general, I think what we're trying to get a hold of and get a better understanding of, and again, this is kind of in this telecommunication process, so please bear with us, and we appreciate your patience as we are looking at a small screen and this package, etc. How are you, maybe verbally, if you would just let us know some thoughts on how you would improve the 12,000 square feet of existing common open space in and around the gym and the entrance to the office? What do you have in mind? And then with outdoor seating, let's say for restaurants, what do you have in mind? What are some things that you've thought of, especially in light of what we've all experienced in the last 6 months?
Sure. Obviously outdoor seating is paramount to any restaurant experience. And so with the parkway planters that we have and the enhanced paving, the benches. I think it'll be a pretty nice corner to sit at a restaurant at. And then as far as the existing common open space, we did have a number of plans going back and forth with Roger. I don't know if it's included in this set or not, but we envisioned additional enhancements, improvements, new paving, new landscaping, but that does not look like it is on this ground floor plan.
One thought that just pops out to me is that the corner plaza space is at the moment divided by this driveway. So you have this main driveway coming off of Brand, and it's always kind of nice to separate vehicular and pedestrian pathways, and more specifically areas that will perhaps cater to diners sitting out. And that's number one, is if you could combine them. And number two is, you know, for an outdoor dining area to be successful, there needs to be a lot of thought process built in as to how waiters and staff go in and out of a public area into the restaurant. So all those things are good things to, I think about as in the stage one, especially in light of what we're all going through, because, you know, Brand Boulevard has really been transformed in the last 4 or 5 months. It's all the outdoor dining areas have been set up, public parking, and street has been transformed into dining area, and it's amazing the vibrancy of the street and how people are adapting, and it might be a trend that just stays in that sense. So it's something to think about as you kind of have a blank slate at this moment.
That's great feedback, and we'll definitely incorporate that as we move the design forward.
Okay. Another question I had, but I haven't really seen any information on it yet, is really truck loading, you know, Uber drop-offs and food delivery, vehicular access and drop-off. How does that integrate itself into the site plan? If you would please kind of walk us through that.
Sure. The great thing that we've done there is we've incorporated it internally. So each building has a separate loading bay. So you won't have trucks parked on the street blocking traffic to do any loading.
So this is the actual podium, and so trucks, delivery trucks, etc., are going into this podium area to make deliveries, and then where do they actually stop? Like if there's a 30-footer that pulls in here, or even a 55-footer, can you accommodate that? Is that going to be able to come in and drop off supplies, etc.?
So we've allowed for, I think they have a 24-foot dimension currently. Typically we allow for like 24 to 30 feet. We don't typically allow for a 50-footer, but like I said, all the loading, all the move-ins, any deliveries, they'll all be internal.
And when you say move-ins, what do you mean by that?
Like hotel drop-off, the port cashier is internal. So anyone, you know, coming for Uber or any of those types of things, that would all be internal.
I see.
So if you may see the plan here, you could see that this is the drop-off zone for the hotel guests. So one can come through here, and this is separated from the main driveway, and there is an access from this drop-off zone into the main hotel room. And also people who are coming by, pedestrians can come through the main room. And the loading, we have loading for each of the tower on dedicated locations. And there is also another loading for larger trucks, which is already, it's an existing area. So the building podium is high enough to have higher trucks to come in.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification, and thank you for taking us through that. I think some comments as we're having this dialogue would be, you know, if we're considering an 850, hotel room, 850 room hotel room, is there going to be at any point in time, maybe, I don't know, traffic analysis would suggest that, but there may be 10 or 15 Ubers happening at every point in time. I mean, I just kind of visualize dense hotels that I've been to, let's say in some parts of the world and more specific in Manhattan. I mean, those Ubers are lined up. So there's going to be that thought process as to how those Ubers circulate, where they queue up, and you know, guests have connectivity with their cell phones to be able to kind of communicate with their Ubers. And then you have your service-oriented trucks pulling in that have an area to pull around to, that are out of the way of the Uber and out of the way of regular traffic going in and out. And then you also have like Uber Eats and all these delivery food services that are just being utilized all the time. And those guys are coming in and out very quickly as well. And where do they park? Are they dropping it off in an area and there's some sort of a porte cochere, or is there some concierge service that takes it up? Or are residents coming down and getting this, you know, the food? So those are all, I think, things that we'd want to explore at this stage to make sure something of this caliber is working at probably one of the most prominent corners and one of the most impacted traffic corners. Like when I leave my office on Brand and I go northbound to get on the freeway on the 134 eastbound, pre-COVID it would take me 20 minutes to 25 minutes to go from Milford to actually get on the freeway and get on the first lane. I mean, it just, from 6 to 7, it is just impacted. And level D might be an understatement. And so that's something to consider is, you know, how the cars will come in, how they circulate, where trucks will come in from, and everything I just talked about.
Yeah, that's great feedback. And I think, you know, typically what we do with these larger developments with a mix of uses is the traffic consultant not only does an external impact study of EMT or an LOS study, but we also do an internal queuing study. So we plug in the number of uses and the examples you've gave about Uber Eats, drop-offs, loading, all those types of things. We plug it all into the model, and then we say, okay, how long would it take to get out of the building? Say if you're parked on level 3, or what's the distribution like? So we'll do all of that through the design and entitlement process.
Yeah, and I think it's just important to do some of that up front, especially before you go to council on this or city council, just so, you know, they could really understand and get their arms around this, these impacts. So thank you for that clarification.
Thank you for the feedback. And we are also expecting some of these cars which are in this zone will be used for waiting for Uber or taxis or those kind of areas. So we will definitely study in detail before going to the council.
In regards to your number of parking, you had said that your requirement is 672. How does that can you remind us how the DSP parking requirements are laid out in relation to an 852 guest rooms? What is that parking ratio per hotel room that you've kind of designed to or working towards?
In general, it's 0.8 stall per habitable room is what is required for the hotel parking. So that's where the 672 comes. And we have proposed 700, which is 28 more. And we are thinking that we might lose some of the cars for the taxi waiting areas and uses as we refine this design further.
I see. And the 0.8 per habitable room, some of your larger executive suites, the ones that are, say, 1,000 square feet and have the 2 bedrooms plus the living, in that case, let's say your large typical executive suites, is that considered 3 habitable rooms or 2 in your analysis?
That's the 1 bed resident. So
Well, once again, if you would, we were having a hard time hearing you.
That's sorry, Your Honor, it's considered the per suite. So right now we have generalized the computation based on per unit. So it's basically 0.8 per unit computation for now.
I think what I heard you say is 0.8 parking spots per unit. Is that correct? Is that what was said?
And forgive us, yes.
That's correct. It's 0.8 stall per unit. It is a habitable room, but it is, because it's a hotel, it is considered, we only considered 0.8 per room. Per unit.
So regarding this,
And the other consideration we had is that because it is a hotel use.
No, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense, because if you took 0.08 per unit and you multiply that by 852 rooms, you would only end up with 68 parking spots.
Chair Simonian,
Yeah.
per the DSP, the code required parking is 0.8 per
That-
hotel unit,
That makes more sense. Okay.
per hotel
Okay.
room.
Thank you for the clarification,
Correct.
because the 0.08 was not making sense. Okay.
And forgive us, yes, it's rather difficult to hear
I know.
the project team, so if you would please speak into the microphone, we would greatly appreciate that, clearly.
We're actually hearing Mr. Spector fine, but the design team, I think that's on speakerphone, we're having a very hard time with. In regards to the roof deck, was there a reason why an open space or some sort of a roof deck was not proposed on top of the towers? It just seems like such an opportunity that's being missed.
We could look at that potentially. It's not out of the question entirely. We've done roof decks in other projects. We don't have it in the programming here currently. But as the design evolves, it's something we could look at.
Yeah. I'm sure one of the rooftop decks will be a helicopter landing, I'm sure, but that's gonna be a fire question is, could you do it on one, and how will fire get from one tower to the other in the form of an emergency, et cetera, and if you could have a rooftop on the other, it's something that might be interesting to explore, because it just would be amazing views, right? I mean, once in a lifetime views
Yeah.
up there.
Chair Simonian, I don't believe fire requires helicopter landing on high rises anymore.
Are you sure?
I think
I
they-
am.
Yes,
Wow, that stopped, even for a tower of this size.
we haven't seen many like this.
Okay, okay.
So if you may see the rooftop of the building here, there are some large balcony decks for and also there is there will be some roof deck for the west tower. Whereas the main reason is these kind of buildings will have a huge mechanical equipment requirement at the rooftop. And once the cooling tower and other mechanical equipments are laid out here, there may not be much space for this kind of floor plates. Some different form, yes, perhaps, or we reshape it. One reason.
Yeah, thanks, Slim. So we've looked into the roof decks before. The inherent issue always is, we'd love to put obviously like a restaurant or something up on the roof and give public access, and so everyone can check out this incredible views. But the hard part is the fire code and the occupancy load. It's entirely a higher occupant load factor. And normally, we haven't studied it on this project, but in other projects, we've looked at it, and it requires an additional stair to be added and some pretty hefty upgrades where it doesn't really make it feasible.
I see.
But, never say never, but right now we don't have it in the programming.
I see. Yeah, what you're saying makes sense. I mean, obviously, there is a huge cost factor associated with that, and it'll become an analysis, whether that restaurant will make sense, and whether that space will bring in enough revenues.
We could move the Ani headquarter office there
That would be
and
nice.
invite everyone.
Well, I don't think I don't want to be misunderstood. I don't think it should be a publicly open space or accessibly open space. I just think it would be well utilized as part of the development, whether it's a restaurant or whether it's an outdoor lounge of some sort. There's a need for it in Glendale, and the open space lounges do really well in Glendale. And so that's just something for you to think about. But I didn't want it to be, oh, this is for the public. No, that's not the intent. I think your
Thanks.
open space and how you perhaps combine that corner and how you treat the additional 12,000 square feet is probably going to have more of a public presence than what you do at the top of the tower. Those were my questions. Board members, do we have any other questions for the applicant at this point?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I have a follow-up question.
Please.
On level 5 of the building, there are several spaces that are marked as amenity spaces. What's the intended use for those spaces?
You know, it hasn't been programmed fully yet. So, you know, we'll kind of see once we get a really good idea on schedule and what the world wants after COVID, and what people, you know, liked before is probably not what they like after COVID. And so we'll see. I mean, I'm anticipating some type of, you know, cyber cafe, lounge type of area. So again, business travelers would be able to work out of a space or have meetings or those types of things. But, you know, it really hasn't been programmed.
So if it was banquet space or meeting room space, that would be called out in the final design program? Because I would imagine that those would have additional parking requirements over what is listed right now in the schedule.
Okay, we'd have to look into that.
And also there will be gym and other uses, amenity uses in this level, which will be interacting with the open space.
I'm sorry, would you mind repeating that again, please?
There will be gym and similar uses. And also for the pool, change rooms, sauna, big rooms, similar amenities also will be in this level, in addition to meeting rooms and lounge spaces. So there will be a detailed program developed once we go to the next level.
You know, I think the whole intent of this volunteer, you know, presentation by your team and is for dialogue and ideas, etc. So a thought popped up. I remember visiting the new Netflix building in Hollywood recently, and they have just terrific open exercise areas in and around the decks where you could actually go and walk around the open space in and around the building, right? And then take exterior stairs down and then walk on the next level down and then go in and around the building. And staff actually uses it for exercise, right? They walk around the building, and when they're having meetings, they actually go for a walk around the building. It would be interesting to think about how will COVID change things? And, you know, we're not going to be able to go to the gyms for a while. I personally won't go to the gym. I know my 80-year-old father isn't going to go to the gym anytime soon. So how do you integrate outdoor areas for exercise purposes, right, in a building like this to perhaps accommodate and lure the business traveler, right, if and when the business traveler decides to travel again? Board members, do we have any more questions before we kind of close the public portion? And then also, I'm not sure if there's any callers that have called in.
No, Chair Simonian, no callers. There was one caller at the beginning of the meeting, however, they have dropped off.
Okay. All right. Well, they could call in still. I think the phone number is still on the screen, right? So they could call in.
Yes.
So with that, I'd like to close the public portion. Please, design team and Mr. Spector, do stay with us. I'm sure there might be some other questions and dialogue, etc. And, we'll kind of go ahead and start our thought process here. Mr. Welsh, do you want to start us off?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And just for clarification from staff, I assume that you're just recording comments. Generally, are we intending to pass any kind of a resolution or anything that would be applicable here?
No, I'm just writing down comments, and that'll be included in the city council staff report.
Okay, very good.
And are we going to go through the regular motion of you putting it together and then us reviewing it next time? Is it going to be like minutes format, or is this just more of interdepartmental kind of committee?
I think we'll just be taking notes in this case because we're not memorializing it in conditions or anything.
Thanks for the clarification.
Okay, so my comments. First of all, I applaud the team for putting together a very impressive presentation. I think that this is, as was noted before, a very important gateway into the downtown area, and so it is definitely worthy of a well-designed and spectacular project. I do think that looking at the market for hotels, especially hotels of this room size, is definitely something you should take a close look at. It is a particularly large project. I think I like design elements of the project. I think that there was respect towards the design guidelines, in terms of scaling things back at different heights, and the balcony undulations and things like that. I think are nice touches. I think my main concern with the project is just its scale. This is basically utilizing the entire block, or most of the block, including existing buildings, in order to capture the square footage to build the FAR, which if you were just taking the parking lots, that is the building site itself, you could not build anything close to this height. So, I think that the scale of the project is a little excessive. I mean, you look at most of these tall buildings in downtown, they're 20, 24 stories at most, and this is 35 stories tall. It's very tall. So it will definitely stand out as opposed to most of the rest of the buildings. And I think that's it might benefit from being scaled back. I also think that the fact that you're using the entire project site, including existing buildings, to capture that FAR, but then not do any improvements or changes to those other existing buildings to be responsive to the DSP is it's kind of like having your cake and eating it too. If you're going to include the whole site and all that so that you can capture those air rights, I think you should be doing something to be responsive with those other buildings. Or if not, to give other trade-offs, do other things. For example, you're meeting the minimum standard for the open space, but I think you could be doing more than that. I think that especially with COVID, we've all seen how much open air restaurants and utilizing that is increasing that would be important. Getting rid of that vehicular divider in the plaza space, and frankly, the use of the paseo for open spaces. I mean, it meets the letter of the law, but I think that it doesn't necessarily accord to the spirit. So I think that more open space could be provided as part of the design, and I think that's about it. Those are my general comments and feedback that I would provide to City Council for this at the moment.
Thank you, Mr. Welch. Board Member Smith?
Thank you. I'm having problems with this tonight. Thanks very much. I similarly absolutely appreciate the voluntary providing this overview on a voluntary basis to us. I recognize, like the rest of us, this is a really big project, especially in Glendale. I will say of the process that it comes to us and then goes to council and then environmental review would take place. I absolutely believe the cart is being put before the horse because environmental review could reduce this project in quite a few ways in light of what I have seen. So I just believe that it gets up the developer's hopes a little bit too much and establishes what the project is without analyzing alternatives enough. I think this design is lovely. It's extremely slick. I might even say it's a little bit too urbane for Glendale at this point, as well as being very, very large. I don't really see any sense of place that shows us that this is Glendale. This feels like it could be in Vancouver or Irvine or any place else. And the sense of place is not so much created by the facts and figures that we've been delivered, but defining and developing the distinct characteristics that make this community special to us and make it fit into this community in the future. The height, I will agree with Commissioner Welsh. I think the height is really, really excessive. I do recognize that that the downtown specific plan allows for this, but this taking every inch of allowable height seems a little bit too much. I noticed that the buildings don't really, that step downs in the middle, but it doesn't really step down to the buildings that it's immediately adjacent to, one being 7 stories, one being 14 stories in height. I will say this is nearly the height of the Pyramid of Giza, which was the tallest structure on Earth for an estimated 4,000 years, and why we would have something almost as tall as the Pyramid of Giza in Glendale when there's nothing like that seems like too much to me. It would be taller than Big Ben. We talked about the room saturation factor. I added up the number of hotel rooms and motel rooms in Glendale in the 16 hotels and motels that we have. I used to be an analyst, can you tell? This would actually more than double the number of hotel rooms in Glendale, which would affect all those other small businesses. And of that, I am concerned. And of that, to have a big shiny hotel in the middle of town gives me pause. I agree that it seems as proposed now, I know this plan is changing. It seems to have far too little open space, and the open space that is there, we understand, hasn't really been landscaped or considered very much. I forgot a question that I had, which was if anyone on the project team can answer it. I'm not sure if we can reopen this, but I'm concerned about the maximum depth of ground disturbance that would be required to build something this monstrous right next to the freeway where there is no cap park right now. So, Chair, will you consider reopening this so they could answer that question?
Yes, let's open it for literally 30 seconds, and if we could have the applicant
Sure.
address the
Happy
depth
to-
of the podium and address Board Member Smith's question.
Sure, and just so that I'm clear, you're asking about the amount of soil being removed?
Yeah, the maximum depth of disturbance, sorry. Thank you.
Sure. So, I mean, I've personally worked on projects that have gone down six stories below grade and 9 levels below grade. We haven't, on this point, on this project, brought on a geotechnical shoring engineer to design a shoring system, but we would absolutely make sure that we have no issues with disturbing the neighbor's property or the streets or the freeway when we go to excavate our hole for our parking.
Great. Thank you so much.
No
I
problem.
guess we can close it again. And I'll continue.
Please.
Thank you. I noticed that a lot of words used to describe it are extremely ambiguous or perhaps overly vague. Artistic skin elements to me seems like glass, metal, and glass and brake metal. I don't see enough bay articulation. I do see that that sort of proposed balcony treatment that I'm concerned about its longevity and how long it would look that great, or whether it, in repeating it so many times, it ends up looking a little bit frantic. I do see that the corners are, where are my notes? The corners are recessed. Those balconies were called dynamic balcony expression. I didn't think they were that expressive in that they're glass balconies. Hopefully that could be worked out. The open retail expression, another phrase used on this, apparently means storefront with brake metal and lights. So I get concerned when I see phrases being used that make things sound extraordinary and delightful when all it really is a building. The renderings are extraordinary. I see that a lot of time and trouble has been put into it already when we don't really know if even the community can support it, or traffic, for instance. I take exception, I will say, as a historic preservation professional, to phrases like landmark architecture, feature, and iconic, since it's kind of like saying, I'm going to study to be an actor and I'm going to be a movie star. I recognize you're selling this project, but it makes me feel concerned about it. The floating transparent amenity was another thing. I think it's just a glass railing. As I mentioned, I was very concerned about fire life safety. The unit mix seems so large. I'm concerned about it becoming an apartment hotel. And in going over this, I caught that one tower would be built at a time. So while I do think this is extremely large and very tall, I'm concerned about the city's guarantee that both towers would be completed and the project would be completed. The cap park right next to the project concerned me as well, since it's not really very far along. I looked up the helipad requirement in Glendale. As far as I can tell, it's voluntary at this time, and there would be a lot of HVAC and other equipment on the roofs. The internal traffic circulation concerned me greatly. I have been I've been a business traveler for a long time, and the points that the chair made were really good, and having loading docks right next to the drive up, or the move in as it was called, concerned me. It looks extremely constrained. I see that the 0.8 parking spaces is what's required. I'm very concerned about employee parking and so forth. So just meeting the letter of the law in parking just spreads out the parking problem elsewhere. To me, those are my comments, but my biggest one was about my most significant one was about moving this project along so far and then doing environmental review, which I think is an inherent problem with the way Glendale is moving forward right now. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Smith. Board Member Minas?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Pretty much everything that had come to my mind have been discussed and stated by my associates. I thank you for the beautiful presentation of the project. I also agree that this project is extremely attractive and for the city of Glendale. But the only thing, the positive thing that I think about this project is the the way the buildings are situated, the towers, the shadow of the towers will fall into the freeway and will not block other buildings to the south. But I do have concerns about the traffic circulation, and of course, you guys discussed it in detail. And I also am concerned about open space with the current use of the patios, outside patios, for all restaurants to be used as dining areas. And basically, as a geotechnical engineer, the building with 3 levels of subterranean parking garage, which probably will extend to depths of about 40 feet, the only way that you can support the vertical cuts of this magnitude is to do tie-back anchors for support of the vertical cuts. And of course, on the south, east, and west side of this project, the owners can get permission to extend the tiebacks below the adjacent grounds. And of course, we've got public right-of-way. But my concern would be extending the tieback anchors towards the north. And with this magnitude, the tieback anchors probably will be like 50, 60 feet long. And of course, it may end up exposing on the slope of the freeway, south face of the freeway. So that needs to be kind of looked at very, very carefully by whoever the geotechnical engineer of record, could be on this matter. Again, I am also concerned about the the size of the units, and of course, as I can see, and I've currently are doing many hotel projects, and I would say that more than 80% of my clients are saying that the hospitality projects are on a decline at this time because of the COVID-19, and they're scaling it back. Now, my thought is what's going to happen down the road with all these beautiful large size units if they cannot be rented, on a daily basis. Maybe it would be converted to a long-term residences like Days Inn, the Holiday Inn that was converted to Days Inn at one point. So these are my concern, but I also share the concern of my associates regarding the other matters. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Minas, and board members. I'd like to just start off by really thanking the applicant to really take the time and put this presentation package together. When you bring forward a project of this scale and size, there's just so much details associated with it. And I thought the packet really did a good job of explaining and depicting the project to us. I feel as though by looking at it and going through it and of course asking all our questions, we as the city and of course city council is listening, has a much better understanding of the details of this project. So I appreciate the amount of thought, care, and detail that's gone into it. I think you already got a gist of my thoughts and kind of my questions. So I'm going to really start off by what I see as the positive attributes of the project, and then I'll briefly talk about and opine on or even circle around on some of my thoughts from earlier from the questions. But in general, I think it's a terrific design. As far as the language of the building is concerned, its modern design is, I think, very fresh and very attractive. I would say, as rendered now, these are just pictures and these are renderings. But as a licensed architect and also as a developer, I am looking at this rendering and I'm looking at this design and I'm saying, what would make sense at this point in time? And I'm just giving you my feedback as to what I see as the overall design language. And I like the design language. I think it would be an attractive building for Glendale. I think the way the articulation and undulation of the facade, that wave-like attribute of it is very nice. I like the way those fins kind of taper as they go up. I think that the architects have done a really nice job undulating the corners of the building. And the overall design and feel of the architectural style, I appreciate. Now, I haven't talked about height yet, and that said, I'm just focusing on the design language. The design language, I think, is going in the right direction from at least my point of view. In regards to the scale and mass and FAR and allowable versus provided square footage, I'm puzzled by the average unit size of 775 square feet. I mean, that is an average unit size of the type of large multifamily projects that we currently develop as developers. So when I'm looking at the floor plates and the plan types, to me, that does not depict kind of a, daily rental hotel where business travel stays for a day or two. It just seems like long-term. And I'm not sure about the viability of that business plan on a long-term basis. However, all that will work itself out. But we do need to realize that parking is being provided based on a hotel use. And once built, if it stays empty, what sort of a conversion will occur and how will that affect the overall parking of the project, etc. Now, moving along, in regards to traffic circulation, I think we made some great comments before. I had some thoughts about the internal circulation. I've also expressed the level of traffic that exists in and around the project site to get in and out of the freeway, and how that is backed up usually all the way to Milford usually. And so I urge you in your parking studies to consider and to work with the transportation department as to the accurate street widenings, turn lanes, etc., and how that is going to affect this project. In addition, I think a really big picture would be, how does this project and this sort of a significant investment in this corner, how could it be dovetailed with some of what maybe the city has in mind for, urban parks, etc.? What I'm getting at is, years ago, there was a vision of really creating a rooftop and enclosing the freeway, literally at Brand and Sanchez, and having a large urban park over the freeway. Obviously, that's a very big undertaking, and that's come in and out of flavor over the years. However, I think there are several things that might result out of this project. One is, if you're getting on the freeway on-ramp eastbound on Brand towards the 134 and towards Pasadena, that on-ramp is like 2 lanes and then funnels to 1 and is extremely impacted. If we're adding this much parking, I would assume at some point you got to work with Caltrans and see if there's going to be some sort of widening of that eastbound, onbound freeway ramp. I think that's very important to look at up front. We've discussed how Sanchez might need to be widened. I'm not sure. It does not seem like you're proposing anything on Brand to widen, but I think most of the congestion is really on Sanchez and really northbound, at least on Brand. That said, I think we've kind of gave you some input, and the cart is being put in front of the horses at this point, and you really should look at a transportation study. In regards to the common open space, Board Member Welsh made some comments and made comments earlier. I think you really need to use this opportunity and to design for the next 10 years, 15 years, and how we post-COVID are going to use these public open spaces and how restaurants are going to function. Restaurants have been very busy and very packed and very booked in Glendale. There's really not enough of them. And the ones that have outdoor seating are just doing really well. And so that's something to think about is how can you use this to create some cash flow in the form of restaurants with nice outdoor seating, and how could that plaza really benefit from that? I think it's a missed opportunity not to consider a roof deck. However, I understand the extremely high costs associated with it. I think it would be nice to have very detailed site plan analysis for truck loading, Uber drop-offs, food delivery, vehicular access, unloading, etc. And we really need to look at, I think, internal pedestrian pathways. I don't think there's going to be a gym at this building. You have Equinox across the street. You have an LA Fitness down the road that just got repositioned. 24 Hours is redoing their large. There's two 24 Hours, and the northern one is a super sport, and they're renovating or soon to renovate the entire space. So I just don't really see a gym coming here, but for your tenants, for your guests, as I said, paths, circulation, etc., I think could be something interesting for you to look at, and that would meet your landscape requirements, and it would be something very functional as well. So I think, in general, I think your diagram, your building section is depicted on page 21, and also your massing studies that you've done on page 20 of the package. I think building articulation, undulation, design is on the right track. Height and mass and FAR will let City Council address those matters. I think there should be some plan for that fifth level plaza, that open space. And perhaps there should be 2 or 3 ideas of this post-COVID world of how that plaza could be utilized based on your intended kind of hotel use and restaurant use, etc. But I think that dialogue should maybe come from you as in, hey, here's what we think could occur on there, because that is just a terrific outdoor space, and there should be something there that really works in a post-COVID area. I think you have a very difficult job ahead of you because you are proposing, the largest project in Glendale, and we're in the middle of a pandemic, and how do you work out the program? And the targets are moving. It's a daily target that's moving. How, as a developer, how do you get your arms around it, and how do you put a flexible program together that's going to endure the test of time is a challenge. But design-wise, I think the language I support, and I wanted to bring that up front because there were comments that made earlier, and it's a board. That's why you're here. You're going to get different viewpoints, and you're going to maybe get different viewpoints from council as well. But that's what this is all about. So those were my thoughts. I know that we're not going to end with a motion or conditions or anything like that, but does staff have any clarifications that they would perhaps need from the board, or further dialogue that we should have that will help staff to formulate thoughts in the future?
I've got 7 pages of notes, which will cover a lot. I probably missed some stuff, but between the three
I've
of us,
also taken notes.
yeah, between the 3 of us, we'll have a lot.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the design team and Mr. Spector, we really appreciate your time and your efforts. Hopefully this was helpful in regards to direction. You could call it a really massive, large neighborhood council meeting in a sense. You got a lot of input. Hopefully it was productive for you. And for the design team, I gotta say at IBI, really appreciate the package you've put forward. And it does a really good job depicting the attributes of this building. And I think you've done a good job with the design as far as language is concerned.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you both. We appreciate and we will take this constructive feedback.
Oh, thank you. I know we've already voted on the minutes. Is there any other business that we have at this point? All right. Does anybody want to move to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Adjourned. Have a good evening.